Greetings, everyone. I'm speaking to you today from Anacortes, Washington. I was 17 years old and living in Atlanta, Georgia, when in 1968, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered in Memphis, Tennessee. It was a turbulent time all around. Racial conflict was part of the landscape wherever you looked. The March on Washington had happened 4 years earlier. The crossing of nonviolent civil rights activists at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma and the assassination of Malcolm X had occurred 3 years before. And then there were the riots in Los Angeles and in Detroit. And so my family and I were aware, very aware of the struggle for civil rights and Dr. King's nonviolent activism. But what we were not aware of were his principles of nonviolent activism and the fact that his followers were trained carefully in how to respond to their opponents in a nonviolent fashion. For nonviolent response, it seems, does not come naturally to many of us, especially when we feel threatened and subject to the potential violence of others, something that some people feel all the time. And so today, as we remember Dr. King and all he stood for, I thought it best simply to read to you and to myself 5 of the basic characteristics of nonviolent resistance. This is a summary of some of King's words in his work, Stride Toward Freedom. I invite you to listen and to notice out of these words what inspires you and what challenges you. And as you do this, I invite you to reflect on where what King has said matters to you today, in our world today. 1, nonviolent resistance means neither cowardice nor passivity. Nonviolent resistors are not cowards, but strong individuals. It takes strength to resist the use of violence. If, however, resistors are nonviolent because of fear or because they do not have the means of violence, they are not practicing true nonviolence. Also, nonviolent resistance is not a do-nothing method. It is only passive in that the resistor commits no physical aggression against the opponent. Quote, "The method is passive physically, but strongly active spiritually. It is not passive non-resistance to evil. It is active nonviolent resistance to evil." 2, the goal of nonviolent resistance is not to defeat anyone, but to create friendship and understanding. Instead of destroying the opponent, the nonviolent resistor tries to awaken a sense of moral shame. The end is redemption and reconciliation. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, while the aftermath of violence is tragic bitterness. Much of that are King's own words. 3, nonviolent resistance attacks evil rather than the evildoer. There is a distinction between evil and the person committing the evil. Thus, in fighting racial injustice, the struggle is not between races, but rather between justice and injustice, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. King's own words. Nonviolent resistance seeks, quote, "to defeat injustice and not the persons who may be unjust," end of quote. 4, nonviolent resistance involves turning the other cheek, not responding to violence with violence. The nonviolent resistor is willing, quote, "to accept blows from the opponent without striking back, to accept violence if necessary, but never to inflict it," end of quote. Why? In this, King quoted the Indian leader and foremost advocate of nonviolent resistance, Mahatma Gandhi, who said, quote, "Suffering is infinitely more powerful than the law of the jungle for converting the opponent and opening his ears, which are otherwise shut, to the voice of reason," end of quote. And 5, love is central to nonviolent resistance. The nonviolent resistor avoids not only physical violence, but also spiritual violence, refusing to hate the opponent. To act otherwise would only increase the hatred in the universe. And I quote, along the way of life, someone must have sense enough and morality enough to cut off the chain of hate. This can only be done by projecting the ethic of love to the center of our lives. End of quote. And so thank you today for listening. On the screen, you'll see soon are the other resources related to Dr. King's thought and what you might do today to honor him and to honor his legacy.